Next, you're going to hear from Bill Ayers, who he tells me he has 3 children and 2 grandchildren, and he's a distinguished professor and teaches at the University of Illinois Chicago. But I need to say that when I got to MSU, I was 16 years old, and I had one great lesson in high school by going down to Plum Street in Detroit and talking to Peter Werby and Harvey Oshinsky, the editors of the Fifth Estate. And then just before I came up here, I heard a great talk on Manifest Destiny by Frank Joyce, who's sitting in the audience at the Grosse Pointe War Memorial. And I had studied Chinese land reform some. But Bert one day said, come on, there's somebody I want you to meet. And we got in his car, we drove by the student union, and Bill Ayers got in the car. And then the rest of the afternoon, I spent talking to Bill and listening to Bill and asking him all these questions. But then what? I mean, when you tear it all down, then what do you replace it with? And I was saying this afternoon, we don't have to worry about that because Cheney and Bush have shredded the Constitution. They've already torn it down. But at the time, I had these questions, and by the end of the day, whatever Bill told me, I put on a little SDS button, and it didn't matter. I just had the faith to go on and declared myself a communist. Of course, you know, it was like years later that I realized I was really an anarchist, but at the time...
Sorry, I led you astray. My mistake.
But at the time, I really enjoyed hanging out with Bill. So, Bill...
Sorry, I meant be an anarchist. Did I say be a communist?
No,
I meant
probably
didn't. Just kidding. The great Chicago poet and our neighbor and Illinois Poet Laureate Gwendolyn Brooks wrote a tribute to Paul Robeson, and it ends this way. His was the major voice, the adult voice, reminding us in music words that we are each other's business, we are each other's harvest, we are each other's magnitude and bond. When I got to Michigan State as a regional traveler for SDS, I had the great good fortune of falling in with Bert Garskof, who was for me a mentor, an inspiration. And I learned something young that I carry on to this day, which is I'm always searching for a mentor. And it's important to have a mentor who has a vision and who has a brain, somebody who's thinking, somebody who's willing to change. It's great if he has a good smile also, which Bert always had, and is cute like Bert. But those aren't essential. But it was essential for me to find Bert Garskof when I found him. Somebody who was just a bit older, but had the courage of his convictions and the willingness to put it on the line for what he believed in. And so it's a tremendous honor for me to be asked by Bert to say a word here about where we are in 40 years on. So thank you, Bert, and all love to you. One thing I feel about the 60s is that it's been commodified, and it's something that gets sold back to us in kind of fragments. And nobody actually lives their lives in decades. I don't remember any of us saying on December 31st, 1969, oh shit, it's time to change. It just does, it's not that kind of a thing. And in a way, nostalgia for the 60s is like a wet blanket on the young people. It's like something that says, oh, I should have lived in the 60s when the sex was better and the music was terrific and fighting in the streets was just a way of life. None of it true, all of it fiction. And so we have to kind of recognize that then we were intergenerational people. Today we're intergenerational people. I can't think of anything more deflating than being nostalgic for a ship that's already left the shore. On the other hand, it's worth coming together 40 years later and saying, what is that spirit that we recognize that we can build on? What is that spirit that we want to connect to? That spirit of rebellion, the spirit of resistance, the spirit of insurgency and spirit. It's that spirit that we should be talking about. But just to give us a little perspective, I'm reminded of something that Zhou Enlai, the Chinese premier under Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai was asked by a European reporter if he could comment on the impact in his thinking of the French Revolution in terms of the Chinese experience. And Zhou Enlai thought about it for quite a long time, and he said, the French Revolution, too early to tell. And I think there's something to that, that, I mean, if you take the long view, empire is in decline. If you take the long view, there's a lot to look forward to. But of course, that's not exactly how we experience the here and now. So many of us have watched with absolute horror as we've been marched step by step towards an authoritarianism that was unthinkable 40 years ago.